Very good morning. It's just past 10 by the clock. We're back again with another edition of News on the Hour. This is Power Pack 60 minutes of news as it happens on the ground, where we cut all the noise and bring you news with facts. Well, I'm Anil Thomas. Let's get started with the top stories that we are tracking at the top of this hour. G7 leaders, EU, NATO, United Nations agree to stand united against Taliban. Say Afghanistan must never again become a safe haven for terrorism, nor a source of terrorist attacks on others. UN Human Rights Council holds special session on Afghanistan. Calls for a dedicated mechanism to closely monitor the human rights situation in Afghanistan. US President Joe Biden refuses to extend Afghanistan evacuation deadline but hints at contingency plans. Says Taliban's actions would be judged while taking steps to move forward in response. Union Minister and BJP leader Narayan Rane granted bail by a Mahad magistrate. Case registered against Rane in connection with his alleged statement against Maharashtra Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray. Court puts some condition while granting bail. India's first mRNA-based COVID vaccine found to be safe, given nod for phase 2 and phase 3 trials. Country's cumulative COVID-19 vaccination coverage crosses 59 crores, 55 lakhs. Health Ministry's Sanjivani initiative completes 1 crore consultations. India to play against England at Headingley in Leeds. India have a psychological edge by winning the second test against England. Lead the 5-match series 1-0. Well, those were the headlines. Now for the stories in detail, starting first up with the top story that we are bringing from the G7 leaders meeting there. The leaders of the group of 7 countries called for calm and restraint to ensure the safety and security of vulnerable Afghan and international citizens and the prevention of a humanitarian crisis. Chairing the virtual emergency G7 leaders meeting in London on Tuesday, United Kingdom Prime Minister Boris Johnson said the G7 had agreed to a plan to deal with the Taliban, with their number one condition being that militants must allow the safe passage to Afghans wanting to leave the country even after an August 31st deadline. G7 leaders and heads of the European Union, the United Nations and NATO met virtually to discuss the unfolding situation in Afghanistan.
We've got together the leading Western powers and agreed not just a joint approach to dealing with the evacuation, but also a roadmap for the way in which we're going to engage with the Taliban, as it probably will be a Taliban government in Kabul. And the number one condition we're setting as G7 is that they've got to guarantee right the way through August the 31st and beyond safe passage for those who want to come out. Now, someone will say that they don't accept that, and some of them, I hope, will see the sense of that, because the G7 has very considerable leverage, economic, diplomatic, and political.
Well, the leaders of the group of 7 nations have said that Taliban will be held accountable on terrorism and human rights issues. The UK Prime Minister urged the member countries to continue to stand by the Afghan people and step up support for refugees and increase humanitarian aid. Boris Johnson said that the huge leverage which the G7 could yield over the Taliban after it seized control of the country just over a week ago included withholding substantial funds.
Help with the humanitarian crisis, the difficulties that people in Afghanistan, people fleeing Afghanistan are going to experience. But when it comes to engaging with the Taliban and engaging with the government in Afghanistan, whatever its exact composition, the G7 has huge leverage. And today, the G7 agreed, we brought them together, and they agreed a roadmap for future engagement with the Taliban. So that, if those huge funds are going to be unfrozen eventually for use by the government and people of Afghanistan, then what we're saying is Afghanistan can't lurch back into becoming a breeding ground of terror. Afghanistan can't become a narco state. Girls have got to be educated up to the age of 18 and so on.
Well, US President Joe Biden said that US is on pace to meet the August 31st deadline for evacuations despite previous calls from allies for an extension. In a televised address after the G7 meeting, Joe Biden said the Taliban must not disrupt US operations or access to Kabul airport for the deadline to be met. He recognized the success of the mission will depend largely on cooperation from the Taliban. Joe Biden has asked the Pentagon to prepare a contingency plan should an extension become necessary.
First, on evacuation, we agreed that we will continue to our close cooperation to get people out as efficiently and safely as possible. We are currently on a pace to finish by August the 31st. The sooner we can finish, the better. Each day of operations brings added risk to our troops. But the completion by August 31st depends upon the Taliban continuing to cooperate and allow access to the airport for those who we're transporting out and no disruptions to our operations. In addition, I've asked the Pentagon and the State Department for contingency plans to adjust the timetable should that become necessary.
US President has faced political pressure to extend the withdrawal deadline from US allies in Europe such as the United Kingdom as well as from his own party in Washington. However, Joe Biden made it clear that he believes the sooner the US can finish the evacuation operation, the better. Biden said the airlift had to come to end soon because of an increasing threat from the Islamic State group in Afghanistan.
I'm also mindful of the increasing risks that I've been briefed on and the need to factor those risks in. They're real and significant challenges that we also have to take into consideration. The longer we stay, starting with the acute and growing risk of an attack by a terrorist group known as ISIS-K, an ISIS affiliate in Afghanistan, which is a sworn enemy of the Taliban as well. Every day we're on the ground is another day we know that ISIS-K is seeking to target the airport and attack both U.S. and allied forces and innocent civilians.
Well, Joe Biden said that US is working with its allies in the G7 to present a united approach to the Taliban that holds them accountable for their actions.
The G7 leaders and the leaders of the EU, NATO, and the UN all agreed that we will stand united in our approach to the Taliban. We agreed the legitimacy of any future government depends on the approach it now takes to uphold international obligations, including to prevent Afghanistan from being used as a base for terrorism. And we agree that none of us are going to take the Taliban's word for it. We'll judge them by their actions, and we'll stay in close coordination on any steps that we take moving forward in response to the Taliban's behavior.
The European Union, meanwhile, called on the Taliban to allow free passage of those trying to get out of Kabul airport and on the US to secure the airport as long as necessary to allow the departure of all those entitled to evacuation. Speaking at a news conference after partaking in a G7 summit on Afghanistan, European Council President Charles Michel said that the European Union would continue to advocate democracy and human rights in the world beyond the end of the Western military mission in Afghanistan.
We call on the new Afghan authorities to allow free passage to all foreign and Afghan citizens who wish to get to the airport. We have also raised this issue with our American friends and partners on two particular aspects. First, the need to secure the airport as long as necessary to complete the operations. And second, a fair and equitable access to the airport for all nationals entitled to evacuation.
The European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen told media that most European Union staff based in Afghanistan, including Afghans, had been evacuated from Kabul airport. She said the G7 leaders agreed it was their moral duty to help the Afghan people following the Taliban's return to power in Afghanistan.
EU's staff, and including the Afghan staff, including their families, have been evacuated now from Afghanistan and are safe. We all agreed that it is our moral duty to help the Afghan people and to provide as much as possible support as conditions allow. The situation is indeed a tragedy for the Afghan people, and it is a major setback for the international community.
Well, after the G7 emergency summit, German Chancellor Angela Merkel announced a financial lifeline worth a total of $600 million to Afghanistan. Addressing media, the German Chancellor said that the aid will be provided through UN institutions. Merkel further said Germany would cooperate with neighboring countries like Iran and Pakistan on the resettlement of Afghan refugees. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that Russia has no intention of blocking the UN Security Council's work on Afghanistan. Speaking at a press conference in Budapest on Tuesday, Lavrov said that French President Emmanuel Macron has recently suggested during a conversation with President of Russia Vladimir Putin that the 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council should meet to exchange views on Afghanistan. The Russian Foreign Minister also added that EU's foreign policy chief Joseph Borrell's call for not letting Russia and China win control of the situation in Afghanistan are deplorable, and that he should be focused on the soonest settlement in Afghanistan. He said Russia remains committed to the task of establishing peace and stability on the territory of Afghanistan so that threats to the entire region no longer emanate from there. Meanwhile, the evacuation process of Americans and tens of thousands of others from Afghanistan's capital is accelerating. Around 6,000 US soldiers and more than 1,000 from the UK are at the Kabul airport to secure it and organize the evacuation of foreigners and eligible Afghans. Smaller contingents from other NATO members, including France, Germany and Turkey, are also present. Talking to media, the United Kingdom Prime Minister said 9,000 people have been taken out of Kabul by UK alone.
This is an extraordinary airlift. We've evacuated 9,000. The UK alone has taken 9,000 people out of Kabul. I think 57 flights. Huge effort by our military, and we will go on right up until the last moment that we can. We're confident we can get thousands more out, but the situation at the airport is not getting any better. There are public order issues. There are harrowing scenes for those who are trying to get out, and it's tough for our military as well.
US President Joe Biden said over 70,000 people have been evacuated by the United States since August 14th. Biden in a tweet said, and I quote, "This is a testament to the efforts of our brave servicemen and women, to our diplomats on the ground in Kabul, and to the allies still standing with us." Meanwhile, Germany and other nations are also working at full capacity to get as many people out of Afghanistan as possible before the August 31st deadline. In Germany's US Ramstein Air Base, 7,000 evacuees have been flown in. The base has the capacity for 12,000 and it is offering first aid, food and water and care to refugees coming in from Kabul. So far, 37 planes have landed at Ramstein. From there, the evacuees are being taken to further locations by civilian aircraft. On Tuesday, 700 evacuees were relocated from the US base.
Aircraft appear to be extremely resilient. They're very happy to be here on German soil. They seem to be very appreciative and actually in very good spirits, which, considering everything they've been through in the past week or so, is really great to see.
To enter the Kabul airport, it's very hard because outside of the airport are Taliban. Okay, the Taliban are beating them and they are firing on them. They are killing them, and it's very hard to enter to the airport. Yes. and also there is no one can support them to bring them to the airport.
All the people's afraid of from this situation of Afghanistan, especially the ladies. The ladies are too worried about their futures. They can't study, they can't work, they can't do anywhere. They can't go out of their rooms. They can't go out of their houses.
Meanwhile, Spanish soldiers were also seen helping Afghan refugees get into Kabul airport. Footage filmed on a chest cam of a Spanish soldier shows people wearing red clothing to draw the attention of the Spanish military before running and seeking help to get into the airport. More than 1,100 refugees have landed in Spain since last week when the Taliban took power of Afghanistan. Well, amid that evacuation process, the US military has released images and videos of soldiers interacting and playing with Afghan children at the Hamid Karzai International Airport. The children were waiting to be evacuated. United Nations Human Rights Council held its 31st special session on Tuesday on the serious human rights concerns and the situation in Afghanistan. While the Afghan ambassador to the UN in Geneva, appointed under the now collapsed government of ex-President Ashraf Ghani, called for stronger action to protect human rights. The UN Human Rights Chief called for a dedicated mechanism to closely monitor the evolving human rights situation in Afghanistan, including the Taliban's implementation of its promises. And India asserted that the dispensation in Afghanistan must be inclusive and broad-based, underlining the need to ensure that Afghanistan's territory is not used by terrorist groups such as the Lashkar-e-Toiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed to threaten any other country. India also voiced concern about the unfolding humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan, pointing to acute shortage of food, medical care and shelter, and hampering of basic rights to free speech, access to education and healthcare, along with civilians, children and women in Afghanistan.
Of Afghan women, aspirations of Afghan children and the rights of minorities must be respected. Stability in Afghanistan is essential for peace and security in the region. We hope that the territory of Afghanistan is not allowed to be used by terrorist groups such as Lashkar-e-Toiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed. We, the international community, must extend full support to the people of Afghanistan in their desire for peace, stability and security, and enable all Afghans to live in peace and dignity. Thank you, Madam President.
Well, National Security Advisor Ajit Doval on Tuesday hosted the 11th meeting of the BRICS NSA Meet. Tuesday's meeting reviewed the regional and global political and security scenario with particular reference to current developments in Afghanistan, Iran, West Asia and the Gulf, emerging threats to national security such as cyber security. India raised the issue of cross-border terrorism and activities of groups such as the Lashkar-e-Toiba and the Jaish-e-Mohammed, which enjoy state support and threaten peace and security in the region. The meetings have emerged as an important platform for exchange of views on political and security issues among BRIC countries. Well, time now to head into a short breather here on News on the Hour. Lots more lined up from the COVID-19 battle in India and the world, taking a look at vaccination and the new vaccines that are available. Lots to look forward to, even from national political news, along with a big take on the Paralympic Games that's begun in Tokyo for athletes that are differently able. Stay tuned with DD India.
Namaste India.
Namaste land.
Marhaban ila al-Hind. Zari India.
Indu ni hao.
Salam India.
Namaste India.
Namaskar Bharata.
Mui
Nous
India.
sommes land.
Nahnu hunud.
India.
Ma Hindi hasti.
Hum Hindiani.
Salam Hindustan.
We are India.
your window to rising India. India's voice on global platforms. Latest news from India and around the world. In-depth analysis of global headlines. Watch DD India in your country. Available for downlink in all Southeast Asian countries. STTV broadcast is available through the satellite GSAT 17 at 93.5 degrees east. HDTV broadcast is available through the satellite GSAT 10 at 83 degrees east. For technical details, scan here. Switch to DD India now.
Welcome back to News on the Hour. Now coming back to national politics, where Union Cabinet Minister Narayan Rane was granted bail by Hamahad Magistrate Court in connection with his alleged statement against Maharashtra Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray. While granting bail, the court had put 3 conditions, including asking him to appear before the Raigad Crime Branch on the 31st of August and the 13th of September. Rane has also been asked by the court to refrain from passing such comments in the future. The court has also directed police, if they want voice samples, and if they want so, they need to give advance notice to Narayan Rane. Though Union Minister Narayan Rane has some respite, it remains to be seen. The action of Pune and Nasik police as separate cases have been lodged under their jurisdiction, and they may also arrest Narayan Rane in these cases. Well, a quick look at COVID-19 data that's been released by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. 59 crore 55 lakh people have been administered vaccine doses so far in India under the nationwide vaccination drive. 37,593 new cases that have been recorded in the last 24 hours. With this, the active cases now account for 1% of the total cases and currently stand at 0.99%. India's active case load stands at 3,22,327. Moving to recoveries, the recovery rate stands at 97.67%. 34,169 recoveries in the last 24 hours, and the total recoveries in India have now reached 3 crore 17 lakh 54,281. Well, also the weekly positivity rate, which currently stands at 1.92%, is less than 3% for the last 61 days, while the daily positivity rate, which currently stands at 2.10%, is less than 3% for the last 30 days. Testing capacity has also substantially been ramped up in India, with 51 crores 11 lakh tests being conducted in India so far to date. Well, on to different states and reopening of schools there. Heading first to the northeast in Tripura, where schools have reopened for students of classes 6 to 12 along with other higher educational institutions. The government has issued 2 separate notifications with detailed guidelines regarding the resumption of physical classes in both schools and other academic institutions. According to the government notification, all schools will have to function in single or double shifts depending on the space available in the classrooms. As per a separate notification, college institutions and universities, including general, technical and professionals, also reopen from today. Our correspondent Sudip Tokar has filed this particular report.
Schools in Tripura are set to open from today. As per the SOP, only class 6 to 12 in the schools and all higher education institutes are set to open. But there is a set sort of SOP. As per the SOP, the physical classes are set to resume today, but with physical distancing. So it is up to the school authorities to decide how they want to start the school. Like if they have a single shift, they can do it in 2 shifts so that physical distancing can be maintained. After almost 4 months, the schools in Tripura are getting opened. With deep in positive cases, this decision was taken by Government of Tripura. With camera person Shubhrata Shah, this is Sudipta Kaur, DD News, Agartala.
Well, moving to Telangana in south of India, in Telangana, all schools, Anganwadi centers and other educational institutions will reopen from September 1st. Chief Minister K. Chandrasekhar Rao said that schools will reopen amid strict COVID-19 precautions, including wearing masks, sanitization, social distancing, among others. Schools have been shut since mid-March and classes were held online for the students. The country's first mRNA-based COVID vaccine has been found to be safe and was given the go-ahead for Phase 2 and Phase 3 trials. Genova Biopharmaceuticals, the Pune-based biotechnology company working on the nation's first mRNA-based COVID vaccine, submitted the interim clinical data of the Phase 1 study to the Central Drug Standard Control Organization. The Ministry of Science and Technology said in a statement that Vaccine Subject Expert Committee will review the interim Phase 1 data and found that HGCO19 was safe, tolerable and immunogenic in the participants of the study. The study will be conducted in India at approximately 10 to 15 sites in Phase 3 and 22 to 27 sites in Phase 3. Genova plans to use the DBT ICMR clinical trial network sites for this phase of study. Well, India also continues to cross milestones as far as the vaccination drive in the country is concerned. The current number that India has completed vaccination of people is 59 crores 47 lakh vaccine doses being administered in India so far under the nationwide vaccination drive. Out of these, more than 54 lakh 67,000 people were vaccinated in the last 24 hours. The vaccination exercise as a tool to protect the most vulnerable population groups in the country from COVID-19 continues to be regularly reviewed and monitored at the highest level. The Union Health Ministry's National Telemedicine Service or e-Sanjivani has conducted more than 1 crore teleconsultations across India. E-Sanjivani has been used by the public in 701 districts across India, and over 56% of the patients on e-Sanjivani are females. Of the 1 crore patients served by e-Sanjivani, around 0.5% are 80 years and older, and around 18% are 20 years or younger. The ministry said this in a statement. E-Sanjivani has been quickly adopted by patients, doctors and specialists across the country, and it is evident from the fact that it has shown astounding growth by over 1,000% in the last 10 months. The top 3 states which have registered the highest consultations through e-Sanjivani and e-Sanjivani OPD platforms are southern states. These include Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. Notably, that even when the internet penetration in the country is below 50%, this innovative digital health initiative of the Health Ministry has been able to defeat the tyranny of geography, distance and time and establish itself as a parallel stream of healthcare services delivery. Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, who's on a 2-day visit to Mumbai, will today chair the annual review meeting of the performance of public sector banks with all the heads of the PSU banks. The Finance Minister will also launch EASE 4.0, that is Enhanced Access and Service Excellence. EASE is a common reform agenda for public sector banks aimed at institutionalizing a clean and smart banking. Its first edition, EASE 1.0, was launched in January 2018. On Tuesday, the Finance Minister held important meetings with the senior officers of the Income Tax Department and officers of GST and Customs. Revenue Secretary, Central Board of Direct Taxes Chairman, Central Board of Indirect Taxes and Customs Chairman were also present. Later in the evening, the Finance Minister also met with industry leaders at an event organized by the Confederation of Indian Industry, that's CII. Ministry of Information and Broadcasting is celebrating the iconic week from August 23rd to 29th this year as part of the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav celebrations. Carrying forward the enthusiasm for the iconic week from August 23rd to 29th of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, catch a glimpse of the activities lined up for the day by various media units of Information and Broadcasting Ministry. A series of special programs are scheduled today on AIR network, which include Azadi Ka Safar, Akashwani Ke Saath in Hindi at 2:50 p.m. and 8:20 p.m. in the night. In English, 2:20 p.m. and 8:50 p.m. also, World News will be aired at 10:50 p.m. All India Radio will also broadcast the special program Nishan Sabarmati Ashram Ki Kahani in Parikrama at 4:30 p.m. A documentary, India Wins Freedom, will be telecast at 5 p.m. on DD National. Naye Bharat Ka Safar, legislative reforms, will be telecast at 7 p.m. on DD News. While the journey of New India, digital revolution and startups will be telecast at 8:30 p.m. on DD India. The other departments of Information and Broadcasting Ministry, including Publication Division, Bureau of Outreach and Communication, New Media Wing and Press Information Bureau, are also organizing special programs to celebrate the iconic week. While India's glorious freedom struggle is one of the greatest movements the modern world has witnessed, the Indian independence movement was a series of historic events with the ultimate aim of ending British rule in India. DD India brings to you a glimpse of that struggle every day. Today's episode of Saga of Freedom focuses on Subhash Chandra Bose and Ganapati Agaram Annadurai Iyer Nasate. Let's take a look.
On this day in 1943, Subhash Chandra Bose became the Supreme Commander of the Indian National Army, INA, or Azad Hind Fauj. The INA was formed in September 1942 by Ras Bihari Bose in Southeast Asia during the World War II with the purpose of an armed fight for India's independence, but soon it was disbanded. It was revived under the leadership of Subhash Chandra Bose after his arrival in Southeast Asia in 1943. It was in early 1943 that Bose recognized that Southeast Asia, with its large overseas Indian population, was the fertile ground for establishing an anti-colonial force to fight the British.
मैं इस जिम्मेदारी को कबूल करता हूं, लेकिन निहायत नम्रता के साथ और खुदा से दुआ मांगता हूं कि उन्होंने हमें वो ताकत, वो जोश और वो बहादुरी दें.
In January 1943, the Japanese invited Bose to lead the Indian nationalist movement in East Asia.
旧インド仮政府師範スバス・チャンドラ・ボース氏は空路ビルマに到着。日本と共にアジア解放の戦いに駒を進める。
Subhash Chandra Bose was one of India's most prominent nationalist leaders who advocated armed struggle as the only way to free India.
I do not know how many of us who are going to participate in the coming battle will survive to see India free. But whether we survive or not, whether we individually live to see India free or not, we are confident that India shall be free.
Netaji named the brigades of INA after Gandhi, Nehru, Maulana Azad and himself. There was also an all-women regiment named after Rani of Jhansi, Lakshmi Bai. Under his leadership, the INA drew ex-prisoners and thousands of civilian volunteers from the Indian expatriate population in Southeast Asia. The armed resistance of RNA and their sacrifices are etched in people's memory forever. 25th August is also important in the history of the Indian freedom struggle because it is the birth anniversary of the famous freedom fighter Ganapati Agraharam Annadurai Ayyar Natesan. He was born in 1873 in Tanjavur. In 1900, he started the Indian Review, a monthly publication in English. The paper covered mostly nationalistic themes. When Mahatma Gandhi visited Madras for the first time since his arrival in India in 1915, he stayed at Natesan's house for almost a month. G.A. Natesan, who was a prolific writer and a journalist, established his own publishing company in 1897. He was a well-known publisher of Gandhian literature, including speeches and writings of Bapu.
Well, time now for us to head into another short break here on News on the Hour. On the other side, we'll get you updates on the numbers when it comes to global numbers and news from international news along with sports updates. Stay tuned.
As the day unfolds and news and events take shape, we get you complete coverage of every news breaking in, tracking new developments as they happen. Midday Prime English, Monday to Friday, 2 p.m. on DD India.
Welcome back to News on the Hour. It's time now to take a look at all the international stories, starting first up with updates on COVID-19 from across the world. So far, more than 21 crores, 39 lakh people have been infected by coronavirus. One big number, one positive number that one looks at the screen, 19 crore 14 lakh people being able to fight the virus and survive. Total number of deaths worldwide, 44 lakh 63,000 fatalities. United States continues to remain the worst affected by the pandemic, both in terms of infections as well as fatalities in terms of infections. New highs being hit, over 3 crore 89 lakh cases of COVID-19 in America there. And also when it comes to fatalities, now the death toll slowly inching towards that 6.5 lakh mark. As we speak, over 6 lakh 48,000 deaths being reported from America due to coronavirus. With resurge of the COVID-19 cases in the United States, the nation's top infectious disease expert, Dr. Anthony Fauci, on Tuesday said that US could get the pandemic under control by early next year if vaccinations ramp up. Fauci said full FDA's approval for the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine paves the way for more and more people to get inoculated, with potential approval for Moderna Inc. in the coming weeks and authorization for younger children by autumn. The US health officials have noted that the number of inoculations has also risen in the recent weeks and say they hope Monday's FDA action spurs more people to get their first shots.
I would like to appeal to this country, to the people in the country who are not vaccinated, to realize that we have the capability among ourselves to essentially cut down the time frame to getting the end of this pandemic very, very clearly. Get vaccinated and the time frame will be truncated dramatically.
Well, Israel on Tuesday expanded its COVID-19 vaccine booster shots to those over 30 years of age. A statement from the country's health ministry said its decision to lower the age of eligibility for a third dose of Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine from 40 to 30 years followed a recommendation of the advising experts and its epidemiology task force and vaccine committee. Boosters are administered to people who have already received their second dose at least 5 months ago. In some other international updates, in Colombia, a methane gas explosion at a coal mine in central region left at least a dozen people dead on Tuesday. The miners were killed after the underground shaft that they were working in exploded as a result of the methane gas buildup. The mine was located in the Topaga municipality in central Boyacá department. Rescuers are now working to retrieve the bodies, but the collapse at the main shaft is complicating efforts. In 2020, 171 people were killed in mining accidents in Colombia. New York's first female governor, Kathy Hochul, was on Tuesday sworn into office by the state's highest judge. She promised to change the state's political culture and work to ensure New Yorkers believe in their government again. Kathy Hochul takes over the governor's office in the wake of a sexual harassment scandal that drove her predecessor, Andrew Cuomo, from power. She promised that changing the culture of Albany would be her top priority. Hochul pledged to strengthen the state's response to a COVID-19 pandemic and speed direct aid to residents in need. Well, Algeria has on Tuesday cut diplomatic relations with Morocco, citing hostile actions by its most populous neighbor. Algeria's Foreign Minister Ramande Lamamra accused Morocco of using Pegasus spyware against its officials, supporting a separatist group and failing in bilateral commitments. While the border between the two North African countries have been closed since 1994, they've had diplomatic relations since 1988, when they were restored following an earlier dispute. Morocco has said for years it wants the border to reopen. Algeria has said it must stay shut for security reasons. Well, Zambia's new president, Hakainde Hichilema, on Tuesday pledged to tackle the country's unsustainable debt. Speaking at his swearing-in as the Southern Africa's country's 7th president, Hichilema lamented that the national budget was overwhelmed by the cost of servicing it. Of Zambia's $12 billion external debt, around $3 billion is on euro bonds. $3.5 billion is bilateral debt and $2.1 billion is owed to multilateral lending agencies. The new leader, who lost 5 previous presidency attempts, must now revive an economy weighed down by debt, unpredictable world commodity prices and COVID-19. Zambia became Africa's first pandemic-era sovereign default in November last year. On to sports stories, Team India has gained the psychological edge by winning the second test against England. Going forward, the third test will now be played from today at Headingley Stadium. Virat Kohli's team is leading 1-0 in the 5-match series, and in such a situation it will be difficult for England to beat India. Let's take a look at this preview.
The third test between India and England is to be played at Headingley from 25th of August. Team India has already taken a 1-0 lead in the 5-match series by winning the second test, whereas the first test match was a draw. Going forward, Virat Kohli's team would like to retain Headingley's record, as the team has not lost any match at this venue since past 54 years. If Team India wins the third test, then the team will not lose any series so far. Whereas in the 5-match series played in England in the year 2018, India were defeated by 1-4. Whereas in the match played from 22nd to 26th of August in the year 2002, India scored 628 runs for 8 wickets while playing first. After this, captain Sourav Ganguly declared the innings. Sachin Tendulkar, Rahul Dravid and Sourav Ganguly all three scored centuries in the match. Sachin scored 193, Dravid scored 148 and Ganguly scored 128 runs. Apart from this, Sanjay Bangar also scored 68 runs. Fast bowler Andy Caddick took 3 wickets. The English team under the captaincy of Nasir Hussain could only score 273 runs in the first innings. Stewart scored the highest with 78. Leg spinner Anil Kumble and off-spinner Harbhajan Singh took 3 wickets each. The English team could not do much in the second innings as well and could only score 309 runs. Nasir Hussain scored 110 runs while Kumble took 4 wickets. However, no player of the current team, including Team India's captain Virat Kohli, has played a test match at Headingley Stadium so far. In such a situation, the third test match is going to be even more challenging for all Indian players. Team India was also close to victory in the first test played in Nottingham, but the last day's play could not be played due to rain. With just 1 win away, Virat Kohli will also become the Indian captain with most number of test wins with this in England by winning 1 more test. Sports Desk, DD India.
Well, on to Paralympic Games in Tokyo, and India's Paralympic campaign has begun on the table tennis board there, with India's first player Sonal Patel losing against 2-time Paralympic champion and medalist China's Li Kuan by 2-3 in the opening game of the Class 3 event in women's table tennis at the Tokyo Paralympics. Sonal lost to Li Kuan in a tightly fought match 11-9, 3-11, 17-15, 7-11 and 4-11. Sonal was ahead after the first 3 games but couldn't keep the tempo going into the last 2 games and lost her first match to a better ranked player. Sonal will play her next group match tomorrow. In another match, India's para-paddler there and world number 8 Bhavina Patel, who's placed in Group A of the Class 4 event, lost 0-3 to 2-time Paralympic champion China's Zhou Ying in the opening game of para-table tennis at the Tokyo Paralympics. Bhavina lost to Zhou Ying in an enthralling show, the scoreline reading 3-11, 9-11, 2-11. Zhou Ying is a 2-time Paralympic champion at the 2008 Beijing and the 2012 London Games. Bhavina will play her next group match tomorrow. Well, let's now take a look at some health tip for the day. Kidney stones is a common problem that affects many people. Let's find out what are the effective ways that one can use, especially to reduce the risk of kidney stones.
Kidney stones are quite common in the Indian population. What are the causes and what can be done to prevent the problem? To talk about this, we have with us Dr. Amlesh Seth. How common is the problem of kidney stones?
The northern part where we are living, this is called the stone belt. Almost 1 in 10 persons would face the problem of having either passed a small stone or having had pain because of stone disease, or maybe a bigger stone causing significant damage to the kidney, or sometimes multiple stones, or sometimes bilateral stones leading to significant kidney damage.
Dr. Seth, what can be done to reduce the risk of stone formation in the kidneys?
We should target a urine output of between 1.5 to 2 liters in 24 hours. Generally, during winter months, this target is achieved, but during summer months, we do not increase our fluid intake to achieve that target. So whenever a person is at home for 24 hours or more, at least one time or sometime one should try to estimate the amount of urine that a person is passing, and if the urine output is less than 1.5 liters, then the person should increase the fluid intake to achieve this target. The diets that lead to increased calcium in the urine is excessive amount of milk and milk products, lots of nuts. The diets that increase the oxalate intake are berries, tomatoes, spinach, green leafy vegetables. So one should take these items in small amounts and as mixture of items. So if one is taking, say, palak with a little bit of curd, the calcium in curd and the oxalate in palak will get balanced out. Excess consumption of non-vegetarian diet, meat and meat products also increases the risk of stone disease, and even these things, they do have a good amount of protein, but they should also be consumed in small quantities.
It is said that once a stone former is always a stone former. What can be done to reduce the risk?
A person who has had one stone episode is definitely at a high risk of having another stone episode. The fluid intake in a stone former has to be higher than the fluid intake in the normal population. The amount of urine output that a stone former should target is between 2.5 to 3 liters. So the person should increase the fluid intake mainly in the form of water, but lemon juice, a little bit of lemon has also been shown to reduce the risk of stone disease. If the fluid intake is good, then even if a small stone of 2 or 3 millimeters is formed, then the chances of spontaneous passage with increased fluid intake are high.
Thank you, Dr. Seth, for talking to us. Lifestyle modification and taking certain precautions can help to reduce the risk of kidney stones. But if you are having a kidney stone, do get it treated appropriately. Kiran Bhardwaj, DD News.
Well, that's all we have time for in this edition of News on the Art. But remember that fight against COVID-19 continues. Do not drop your guard, because that's very crucial in this battle against COVID-19. Numbers in India coming down, but one needs to be very cautious of following 3 simple steps. That's SMS. Sanitize yourself, mask yourself, maintain social distancing at all times. And remember, do not forget to get the jab if you are in that right age group. If you are in that age group, please go ahead, get yourself that jab, because it's important. Because when you go to get yourself a jab, you're not doing yourself a good, but you're doing the entire humanity a bigger good. Please go ahead, get that jab done for yourself. And when you go, please get your loved ones, please get your friends, please get your colleagues, get someone along, because it encourages more and people to join that particular campaign to get themselves vaccinated. Remember, if all of us get vaccinated, we all stand a better chance to see a better tomorrow with our loved ones. That's it from me and my entire team. Thanks for watching. Have a safe and wonderful day ahead. Bye-bye.